Hello, I'm Casey Aiken, and this is 21 This Week. Coming up next, Amazon HQ2, why Montgomery County made the cut and Baltimore didn't. Why is Delegate David Moon attacking private country clubs? And the budget crisis kicked down the road while the DACA question is debated with deadlines looming and the Supreme Court review pending. Stay tuned. Our panel of insiders will give you the story behind the story. We're joined by the Dean of Democratic Punditry, Sam Statland, Secretary of the Maryland Republican Central Committee, Mark Uncapher, Maryland Republican National Committee woman, Nicolee Ambrose, and business strategist and consultant, Rich Parsons. Stay tuned for these stories and more on the next 21 This Week. Last year, the world's largest e-retailer, Amazon, announced that it was seeking a suitable location for a second headquarters campus, which promised $5 billion to construct and operate, plus the creation of as many as 50,000 high-paying jobs. Naturally, cities, states, and localities scrambled to submit a viable proposal for review. Of the 238 submissions, Amazon narrowed the search to 20, including Montgomery County, Maryland, our nemesis, Northern Virginia, and kicked to the curb was the city of Baltimore. Sam, Montgomery County politicians have been congratulating themselves on being included amongst the final 20 as if it's proof that they're not anti-business friendly. What happens next?
Well, Casey, the best part about our bid is, and why we came up so high on the list, was because we have a sector plan that allows for that kind of development at that location, which includes expanding a metro, which includes a transportation, infrastructure already in place. So what we have to do is fine-tune our master plan and work like crazy with the Amazon people, bringing them in so that they can share in the planning for what's going to be their great site in Montgomery County.
Oh, thank you, Sam. Rich, Governor Larry Hogan has proposed a massive inducement package. Is he and the General Assembly doing enough?
Well, I think they need to work together and show that Maryland really wants this to come to fruition here, because there are other states and other metro areas outside of our Washington area that are also still in the mix. And I think Democrats and Republicans ought to pull together and make this happen. I think having an incentive package is definitely going to help enhance the chances of our bid being selected. And if people are grousing about taxpayer money being used to subsidize, just do the math and figure out how much economic benefit we receive as a state in county tax revenue and as a county in county tax revenue. And I'll bet you every month that they're here will make back everything we put in for the entire incentive package. I'll bet you the numbers will be about like that. So it's worked out that way with Marriott. We get way more out of these deals from all the property taxes, the people buying homes, buying cars, buying groceries, all the sales taxes, all the other things that accrue to us from having those high-paying jobs here is a huge benefit, and I think we ought to go all out to make sure we land Amazon.
And every time we've allowed public monies to go into supporting companies coming into Montgomery County, we have come out financially way, way ahead of the game.
Right.
Not only from an economic standpoint, but from a growth standpoint, and for more services going to people not engaged with business. So business helps the average citizen improve their lifestyle.
I think the point is, yes, we're in a silly election season and everybody's got their partisan knives out, but this really has to be a bipartisan effort, because one of the things they're looking for is consistency and cohesion in the local government. That's one of the factors they're looking at. We ought to be on our best behavior, I think, and make sure that this
When
gets
is the
over the
decision
finish line.
supposed to come down?
I don't know exactly the timetable.
Was that ever announced, how quickly this would? Because I would say that if it comes down before the election and Montgomery County gets it, Larry Hogan is going to be looking pretty darn good. Nicolee, there are four main criteria that Amazon set out in its search: a metropolitan area with more than 1 million people, a stable and business-friendly environment, urban or suburban locations with the potential to attract and retain strong technical talent. Now, according to the Baltimore Sun, Baltimore meets all of those criteria and more. So why didn't Baltimore make the cut?
So I hate to break it to the Baltimore Sun. I am someone who absolutely loves Baltimore City. I live in Baltimore City, but Baltimore sadly fails on the second criteria, which is a business-friendly environment. Baltimore has had one-party rule, Democratic monopoly since the Great Depression, and you simply cannot, as a resident or as a business, you cannot trust the Baltimore City Council. We've had numerous leadership problems with our mayors. We have crime problems in significant areas of the city, and warning to Montgomery County, do not let yourselves continue to be this one-party Democratic monopoly, because it is not good. It does not benefit your jobs, your economy, or the citizens of your jurisdiction.
Thank you,
Well,
Nicolee.
Nicolee, you have to work with Mark to get some decent candidates to run for office in Montgomery County. We've
Well, they're
never
working
turned out
on
a
it.
decent Republican.
I'm so excited to hear Montgomery County is going to vote for Larry Hogan this fall. Thank you, Sam.
Well, let's not
All right,
count
well,
our
let's go.
chickens yet.
I want to round this out. Mark is, well, locally, much has been made about the possibility that the HQ2 will be built in White Flint submarket. Ignored is the fact that Fairfax and Loudoun counties have proposed at least one site, which is an 85-acre undeveloped site near Dulles Airport and the new Silver Metro line. What does the state have to do to defeat Northern Virginia, which I think is our primary competition?
Well, I think there's a lot. Actually, I wouldn't underestimate District of Columbia in this either. But part of the transportation, part of the issue is going to be transportation, because many of the workers that make the Washington area so attractive, the IT workers, are over in Virginia. So I know Rich is not going to disagree with me on this one, but transportation is going to be a big part of this. I think one of the issues that Larry Hogan has addressed is creating express lines of addressing the congestion along the Capitol Beltway. That would be perfect coming in from Virginia. That would be a perfect way of making White Flint that much more attractive.
But they also wanted access to an international airport.
Correct.
And the only international airport on this side is BWI.
Right.
And the access to Dulles, if you try to go across the Cabin John Bridge, it's a nightmare because we don't have a second crossing. Do you think Montgomery County would build a second crossing if it meant landing Amazon?
Boy, if you could do that, that would be an interesting comparison. No, clearly Dulles and the Washington airports have been one of the important reasons why we're that much more attractive. And I have to say, I'm on the board for Dulles. BWI is a very competitive airport as well.
But from that location, it's equal distance, BWI
Right.
to Dulles. And you have to keep in mind, we're not going to get all of Amazon in one one fell swoop. It's going to gradually increase, along with the proposals to improve our transportation system, which is already in place. But again, business-friendly Montgomery County has on board 5 or 6 developers in that White Flint area that already are working on putting a package together to attract them, along with an educated workforce, along with access to Metro, along with an improvement in Metro at that location, which will include MARC transportation. So we'll be able to bring in educated workforce here in the county, and we'll be able to bring in others from throughout the state. I think we have a big, big plus here in business-friendly Montgomery County.
Well, Sam, I hope you're right, because I've been in the White Flint submarket for 20 years. I think it's a great place to do business, and there would nothing please me more than seeing another 50,000 people operating out of White Flint. I think it's great. I think it's terrific. I hope we get it. I'm worried about Fairfax County. Those Virginia guys, they play dirty. All right, Tacoma Park Delegate David Moon, he's outraged that the state of Maryland has an agreement with private country clubs located in the state to limit their real estate taxes to $1,000 per acre, and he plans to introduce legislation to take Montgomery County out of the exemption. Rich, Delegate Moon admits that he doesn't even know why the exemption was agreed to in the first place by the state. But by golly, he doesn't think it's fair. Is Delegate Moon just another one of those goofy Tacoma Park guys wanting to make a name for themselves?
Well, Casey, I've always operated under the principle that if you're going to change the law, you ought to have done your homework and know the answer why. So for starters, I think we ought to look at why these agreements exist in the first place. These credits were offered in exchange for something. In most cases, a pledge not to develop those properties, which if they did, would generate a huge increase in the revenue or the net worth of the property for the property owner. In lieu of capitalizing on that potential benefit, they entered into this agreement to get the tax break. Now, I don't know how many neighbors of these country clubs will think positively about Mr. Moon's bill when they find out there's going to be 20-story condos right next door instead of what was a nice bucolic golf course. I don't know how many of these golf courses actually need this credit at this point, but it was entered into as part of that negotiation, as I understand it. So I think we have to tread a little carefully here. I think the last thing Montgomery County wants to do is drive these country clubs out and force that land to be developed, which I think it's opening up a can of worms.
Don't we need the housing?
We do need the housing, but I'm not sure the neighbors would be so thrilled with Delegate Moon's approach here if it's done ham-handedly. We ought to do our homework. This might be a great candidate for summer study and just take a look at the issue. And why on earth are we just doing it in Montgomery County? If this is a problem in the state code, why are we just doing it in one county? This should be a statewide
He admitted
issue.
it's because he didn't have any support. Sam,
That might tell you something right
what's
there.
your take on this?
Well, my take on this is the following. A lot of these courses are natural game preserves. My course, for example, Argyle, has the Audubon. We sponsor the Audubon Society, and we do a lot for nature to keep it bucolic, as you were saying. And in our case, our membership initiation fee is not $50,000. I don't even know if it's hit 5 yet. We're a working person's club. That would make a huge impact on us and on Needwood. Not Needwood, but
Well, there are a lot of
Norwood, the
public
smaller clubs.
A lot of smaller
It's a huge
clubs.
impact. So Moon now is saying, once he introduced this bill, that as he's feeding through the reeds or the weeds, he realizes that he may need a two-tiered system or some other kind of system, and I personally don't think this is going anywhere.
Yeah, let's not charge into this. I think it needs a careful look.
Well, I think there's also when a golf tournament is held, like at Congressional, there are lots and lots of revenue generated from these tournaments. So it's not just a one-size-fit-all thing.
It's in the hundreds of millions
It's
a year.
hundreds of millions of dollars that comes in, and whether it's at Avenel, whether it's at Congressional, whether it's at Columbia or Chevy Chase, these tournaments generate lots of revenue, and I just think Delegate Moon just sort of stumbled into something that he thought was a good idea, but may not be. When we come back from this short break, the Democrats in Congress got singed by the government shutdown. Now the DACA issue has both parties' hair on fire as the March deadline is looming. Stay tuned. And welcome back. Last week at this time, there was a looming federal budget crisis between Senate Democrats and, well, themselves over whether to agree to a temporary budget deal that did or did not include a resolution of the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals program known as DACA. Since it became readily apparent that the shutdown was political suicide, by Monday afternoon a budget extension was agreed to that kept the federal government rolling for at least a few more weeks. Nonetheless, the political reaction from both extreme elements of the political spectrum has been loud and vociferous as each side positions itself for what may be a resolution to many immigration issues that have festered since the early 1990s. Hardline leftists say that unless there is amnesty, which grants a pathway to citizenship for all DACA-eligible persons, there will be no deal and no compromise. Equally positioned is the hard right, which would, if it could, send all illegal immigrants, not just the DACA persons, out of the country. President Trump proposed casually in an informal presser that he would consider a plan that would end chain migration, end the lottery system, but offered amnesty for around 1.5 million DACA-eligible persons. Naturally, the fringe elements of both parties had their hair set on fire by this proposal. We can't have a plan. We can't agree on anything. Sam, the immigration issue has been debated since the 1990s when President Bill Clinton was advocating strong border security. This Republican president seems intent on finding a resolution. What's likely to happen next?
Casey, you really have to look back to debates on immigration that go back to the 17 and 1800s. The first issue was citizenship. Went from a 1-year wait to a 2-year wait to a 5-year waiting period to become a citizen. Then we can move into the 1860s, 1870s, and we picked on the Chinese, that we were going to limit immigration for the Chinese. Then we moved into the 20th century, and it was the Irish, too many Irish coming in. Then we go to the world wars, and immigration policy against the Japanese, including internment camps, and in ways we treated the Chinese in about the same way. We've had big issues come up, and it's always been based upon social aspects of the community and economics coming to a given area. And this is no different. This is what we're dealing with. The biggest difference is that in the past, going back to the 1950s, maybe into the 60s, we always would work to solve the issue and not base it on Republican, Democrat political issue. We have a problem. It's immigration. It affects our borders. It affects safety of our citizens. It's an economic issue. You know, in World War II, we allowed immigration for those people that work in agriculture because U.S. soldiers were overseas. And one more point, which was we actually gave soldiers citizenship in World War II overseas. We had 14,000 people become U.S. citizens who were fighting overseas during World War II, and that progressed. So what we really need to do is, in a bipartisan way, and now the opportunity is here, because we've worked critical mass where both sides are upset, both left and right, where we've got to a point where, with a little bit of common sense, and our elected officials doing what's best for the citizens of this country, we'll have decent immigration reform.
Well, that's great, Sam. Do you think it's ever going to happen?
Yes, I do.
All right. So, Nicolee, the left contends that the DACA-eligible people are innocents and shouldn't be forced to return to a country they didn't know, while critics like Angel Mom Agnes Gaboni, whose son was murdered by an illegal alien, says, we don't owe those people anything. Is there any way to resolve this political divide that Sam so eloquently gave us a history lesson on?
So I think there's some really exciting things in the proposal we're looking at right now. Conservatives are really excited about ending, chain migration, ending the visa lottery. I think it's important for us to define what conservatives are actually concerned about instead of what Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi say we're excited about. Things are border security so we don't have gangs and sex trafficking rings and drugs out of control over the border coming in and killing our citizens. Things like MS-13 gang members pretending they're children at 17 coming in, taking slots in our Montgomery County schools. Those are deeply concerning to conservatives. So these are things that we have to have some standards and definitions for when you're trying to have an honest discussion of who might be considered. And then I think what conservatives really want to see is that you get in line. So if all of a sudden you've tried to skip the line, you need to get in line behind the people who legally followed our laws to say, I want to get in line to become a citizen.
All right, now wait a minute. No, Sam, I got to go. I got to take this. Look, now let's talk about the politics of this. Mark, there are two deadlines looming that is forcing a decision. First is a self-imposed deadline established by President Trump that the DACA program will expire in March. And the second is the decision by the Supreme Court to immediately take up the constitutionality of President Trump's DACA termination. Who's got the leverage on this, and how is it going to, what's the outcome?
Well, I'm very skeptical of the Supreme Court challenge. So I think the real issue is, as Sam's teed up, is on this compromise. On one side, are Democrats, are the pro-DACA folks going to accept stronger enforcement of existing laws and changes in the immigration system? And the trade-off for that is getting some changes on DACA.
Rich, wrap it up for us.
Let me start with a couple things. There's been bipartisan support for stronger border security my entire adult life. Okay, and we're already spending twice as much on border security per year that we were just 5 or 10 years ago. So there's been strong Democratic support to securing our borders, and there are no Democrats I know who want to see crime and violence come into our neighborhood. That's a myth, and that is posturing. And Casey, I love you, but your setup was ridiculous in one point. when you said that this president actually was committed to making a deal. He's the one that blew up a deal. He told the Democrats what he wanted in a deal: stronger border security for a DACA solution. The Democrats and the Republicans got together, came forward with a bipartisan bill, and he blew it up and threw out some ridiculously racist comments in the meantime. So for you to say he clearly wants a deal just flies in the face of every single fact about this negotiation. This guy is the worst
we'll never
negotiator.
Well, this is why we'll never.
I'm getting there.
You
I'm
know,
getting there.
Rich,
Let me finish.
Rich,
Let me finish.
He's a brilliant negotiator.
No, he's not.
He's brilliant.
He had the
He's
deal
got
he
you
asked for.
He's got you tied up in knots.
He
Stay
had the
tuned
deal
for
he
Parting
asked
Shots
for,
when
and
we
he
come
blew
back
it.
from this short break. Welcome back. Now with Parting Shots, Nicolee Ambrose.
All right, I am just giddy and excited about tax reform. I am so thrilled. Republicans have wanted this for 10 years. We've been working on it, and now you have it. And you have Apple bringing $250 billion with a B, $billion back to America. You have Starbucks, coming up with $250 million extra. Now they're giving their employees paid leave because they can, not because they're forced to with a government mandate. You have Walmart raising salary minimums. You have Home Depot giving people quarterly bonuses of $1,000 in this fourth quarter. So I'm just excited because what this means is jobs and a better life for Americans, and the money is finally getting to them. So amen for tax reform.
Thank you, Nicolee. Rich Parsons, your parting shot.
I want to talk today about the definition of transformational leadership, and we are marking an important milestone for one such leader in our community. For any of you who have enjoyed a beautiful concert at the Strathmore Hall Arts Center, there's one person in our community who's really been the driving force and the guiding vision for that facility, Elliot Fansteel, who has been a friend and a mentor and a transformational leader for this community. He announced his retirement this week, so I wanted to give a shout out and a hearty round of applause, and in my heart is standing ovation for Elliot Fansteel for his commitment, his vision that has enriched this community in a lasting way that we'll be recognizing for decades and centuries to come. So thank you, Elliot, for your service and your vision, and it's a beautiful thing to see. It's made this community a lot better.
Sam, your parting shot.
I want to give a shout out and a big applause to the Maryland State Senate, who has finally passed a bill that will eliminate parental rights for rapists in the state of Maryland. 9 years long overdue. And now, you guys in the State House, it's up to the delegates to pass the same law in the House, and we'll come together and get this important legislation passed. Thank you all.
Thank you, Sam. And Mark Uncapher, your parting shot.
Next week, the Montgomery County Republican Party is going to be having its annual convention in the Gaithersburg Hilton, and the party will be honoring former Governor Bob Ehrlich, who will be there as a keynote speaker. We also have a tribute video. But if that's not incentive enough to go to hear Bob Ehrlich, you'll also be able to hear from the lovely Nicolee Ambrose. So I hope you can come to that.
Well, thank you, Mark. And Rich, this may come as a surprise, but I agree with you about Elliot Fansteel. Strathmore Hall is a marvelous institution. We're very fortunate to have it, and he was the guiding light.
He really was,
and there is no doubt that it wouldn't be there if it wasn't for all of his efforts.
We need to give Doug Duncan a shout out too.
Well, we do need to give Doug Duncan a
played a
shout.
key role in
Doug Duncan
Really
was key in producing it as well. But Elliot has been the lifelong leader of that, and so we have to give him great kudos for that. So thank you for bringing that up. And I want to thank the panel for being here and engaging in a very lively and engaging debate tonight. And I want to thank the audience for tuning in each and every week to Montgomery County's hardest hitting political talk show. For 21 this week, I'm Casey Aiken.